I don't need to tell people here in Southern Florida that we've got a problem with our condo market right now. We have a problem that was introduced by legislation that was passed in recent years by the Florida legislature. And if you go back and look at the genesis of why that happened, we remember the Surfside, we remember things. The intentions of the legislation were good. I think they were trying to prevent potentially another major tragedy, and we all remember how gut-wrenching it was to watch the aftermath of Surfside, not knowing whether you could have survivors for days and days hoping. It was a really traumatic moment for the state. So I understand why people wanted to see something done. Now, I remember at the time, people were asking me, what needs, and I was like, well, we don't even know definitively what caused the Surfside thing. If you do something without knowing that, you could end up with some unintended consequences. And so the time I said, legislature should talk to their folks, they should figure out what they want to do. I'm not going to stand in the way, but I also know we're going to have an open mind on this, and you may have to come back and revisit some of the things that were done if there are some unintended consequences. Well, here we are today, and we have seen some of these consequences. We have seen sudden high-cost fee assessments that have been imposed on condo owners, many of whom in South Florida, particularly in this community, are senior citizens and living on fixed incomes. And so these are people that have been in a condo for 20, 30 years, probably own it free and clear, thinking, and obviously they've had to deal with inflation and all these other aspects of life for the last 4 years. Hopefully that's going to abate. But then they're told, oh, by the way, pony up $100,000 for an assessment. Where are they going to get that money? So you're putting people in jeopardy of losing their homes. And that should not be anything that we want to be doing in the state of Florida. So we have been meeting with folks. We were down in Southern Florida about 6 or 7 months ago. We've hosted roundtables. We've solicited input. We've spoken with members of the Florida legislature about, okay, what are the issues that need to be addressed? How can we address it? And then we need to address it. We've got to provide relief for people. We do have a responsibility to do this. Now, we saw this last year building up. Everybody knew that there were going to be assessments rendered. I actually called for a special session of the Florida legislature in January to address, yes, illegal immigration, yes, some hurricane relief, but also the condo issue. I thought we needed to give people peace of mind right at the start of the year. We needed to make sure that they had relief from these crippling assessments and make sure that people were able to stay in their homes. The Florida House of Representatives did not want to take up any condo relief legislation at the time. They said it wasn't urgent, that it was something that may or may not need to be addressed in regular session. And so here we are. Legislative session only has a few more weeks left. There has not been meaningful action in the Florida House of Representatives to give Floridians relief from the condo crisis that the legislation itself has caused. And we've got to be willing to step up and do the right thing. Now, the Florida Senate has put forth a proposal that actually addresses a lot of the concerns that we've heard from Floridians across the state. It's incorporated ideas that we provided, and I have no pride of ownership of this. We gave ideas to the senators. We said, here's what people are telling us. You guys are talking to people. You guys have ideas too, and your ideas are better. Some of mine are good, whatever. Let's just get the job done. And so we have been working with these stakeholders. Now, the Senate's current bill includes reforms to increase accountability of condo association managers. It strengthens electronic participation requirements while reinforcing strict voting integrity laws in place to ensure secure elections. It adds increased transparency for residents and creates annual analyses of milestone inspection reports to create a data-driven approach to condo safety. And crucially, it provides more flexibility for associations to phase reserve funding and use alternative funding methods, including investing contributions to generate more money for required repairs. And so that would provide relief from these crippling assessments. And we shouldn't be in the business of mandating that these assessments must be levied on folks. I think you have reform of condo governance, you have transparency, and then the residents are able to make the decisions that they think are in the best interest of themselves. Obviously, if you're a property owner, you don't want to see the property go down the tubes. I mean, you do have a vested interest in making sure, but you also have to do it in a way that's going to be feasible and economically sustainable. So I applaud the Senate for doing this. Senator Ileana Garcia is leading the bill. She's from here in South Florida. I thank them for doing that. And there may be other things that are added to it. Like I said, I don't have pride of ownership. I just want to get the job done for people of Florida. I want people to be able to stay in their homes. I think it's really important that people are not being forced to sell or forced to leave. And here's the thing. Some people will say, well, these folks in there, they have the assessments, and yeah, they're on fixed income, but they bought the condo 30 years ago, so it's worth a lot more. They can make money if they sell. The problem is okay, they sell it. Where do they go? Every house in Miami costs more. Every condo. I mean, it isn't like they're getting a windfall and then can buy something that's very affordable. They would have to potentially buy something that's very expensive. And maybe that's moderating now, and there's, who knows what will happen. But I think you would end up functionally, if someone's forced to sell, particularly elderly, I don't think they would have, many of them would not have a place to go to be able to buy a new place to live. And so that should be a concern of ours. Now, the House's current bill doesn't include any reforms to increase accountability of condo association managers. It creates a more costly and burdensome process for removing board members. It actually weakens electronic voting system requirements, thereby inviting more opportunities for fraud. It does not add increased transparency or comprehensive data evaluation regarding the milestone inspection reports, and it does not provide more flexibility for associations to phase funding for certain components of the Structural Integrity Reserve Study, but rather allows a board to approve assessments and loans without owner approval. Largely, the House's condo bill seems to be something that favors developers and puts the interests of developers over the interests of Florida residents. That is unacceptable. If these associations can't make improvements and the buildings are clearly obsolete, the value of the real estate that they are built upon may outweigh the investment. The problem is many seniors and middle-class condo residents can be displaced and ultimately may not have a place to call home. And so why are we even entertaining a situation where people are going to be put in that awful predicament? And here's the thing. Things happen in life, right? There's things, so many things that we cannot control in state government that happens, that it can impact people. But this is something that was created by legislation. This would not be happening without legislation that had been passed years ago. And so let's recognize that. Let's recognize that these consequences are not what we want, and let's provide reforms to be able to keep people in their condo units. That's what I have heard overwhelmingly from Florida residents. And we've been dealing with this issue now for close to a year, where we had folks that have been really concerned about it. And our job as elected officials is to listen and to provide solutions. And not everything can be solved through legislation, but I can tell you, if there's a problem created by legislation, we don't only have the ability, we have a duty to rectify that. And so I want to thank the folks in the Florida Senate who've moved credible legislation forward. I don't know what has gotten into the Florida House of Representatives. They campaign on our Florida success, saying they're going to support the Florida model, and then they get in and they seem to be working to sabotage the great work that Florida has done over these last 6 years. I mean, remember, they fought me, the Florida House fought me when I said Florida needs to be enlisted to help President Trump enforce immigration laws. They tried to make Florida a de facto sanctuary state. Now, there was outrage from the public. People were not happy with that, and so we ended up getting strong legislation, and we're now leading the country on that. What else does the Florida House of Representatives do? They've actually joined with Democrats to undo spending reductions that I instituted in the budget last June. They've given over $60 million of excessive spending in this current year's budget, joining with Democrats to do that and to undo our cost savings that we instituted. That's not what you voted for. That is not what they told you they would do when they were running and seeking your vote in elections.